Thank you. Good morning. Wonderful for everybody to be here. Thank you. It is so nice to see you here at Emerson, at this place that so many of us call our spiritual home, this community, this beloved community of faith and reason and hope and love. It's good to be here this morning. I have a couple quick announcements for you this morning. The first of which involves next Saturday. Next Saturday is a pretty important day. First, in the morning, we have I think it's our first, it may be not our first, but it's our first that we're aware of, worship planning meeting, where what we're inviting you to do is come in on Saturday for a couple hours and talk about what topics you'd like to hear on Sunday, any possible changes that you'd like to see on Sunday. It's just an open forum for Sunday. The goal would be to have, at the end of the session, to have a rough roadmap for what we're going to do for the year and where we're going to place topics and that sort of thing. So we invite you all to come and give your input. I would love to have your input. It's very helpful. I just guess at what I think you want to hear, and sometimes I'm right, and sometimes I'm something other than right. So I would love to have some input. That doesn't mean I'm going to do everything you say, but I will at least listen to your input, and thank you, and I would love to have you. And then following that in the afternoon, we have the memorial service for Max Nelson, who was 96, I think, when he died a couple of weeks ago. And we would love for you to come and be with the family and witness with them this wonderful man. So those are the two quick announcements. Lunch Bunch this week. For those of you who don't know what Lunch Bunch is, we informally go out for lunch after service. Sometimes just some of us go and we pick a place and we all just meet there. And this week the place we have picked is Craft Pita, which is right there. It's, for those of you who don't know, it's San Felipe, and just go down Fountain View just a wee bit, and it's right there. So we'd love to have you there. And I believe next Sunday is Father's Day. Next Sunday is the last Sunday I'll be with you for a while. I take study leave after that. So we have a lot going on in this next week. We have a lot going on today, and especially next Saturday. So I would appreciate your help next Saturday on both of those events. And now I invite Artem to bring us into the formal part of our service.
As we gather in community, we look within ourselves and to each other for strength, restoration, and inspiration, so that as we journey together, we catch the spark of the eternal Spirit, and from that spark, we light our chalice. Lighting the chalice flame symbolizes to all that the spirit of our congregation is strong, and that our will to transform ourselves and the world is also strong. We light the flame with gratitude. We light the flame in memory of all who have gone before, in honor of all who are here now, and with joy for all who are yet to come. As David lights our chalice flame here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you joining us from home to light a candle or a chalice of your own. Reverend Marjorie Montgomery is the Minister Emerita of All People's Church in Fort Worth. She retired in 2001 after a 26-year career serving churches mostly in Texas, but also in Tennessee, Florida, New Mexico, Arizona, and Massachusetts. Please join me in reading these words together as they appear on the screen. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. Welcome. As we work to create beloved community, we welcome all who would join us in building a better world with more love, more justice, and more peace. We welcome all who would join us in growing in mind, heart, and spirit. We welcome all who would join us in tearing down systems of oppression of all kinds. We welcome all who would join their purposes to ours in a loving spirit of right relationship. Please join me in our welcoming. The words are on the screen. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled on or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here.
It is important that we acknowledge that our history here in Houston, in Texas, and in the United States is a shared and harmful history. Our congregation's buildings are situated on the once home of the Karankawa and the Atakapa peoples, who for at least 2,000 years before European settlers arrived, lived here, and those European settlers brought about their end. We may recognize, uplift, and support Indigenous voices and communities in our work as a congregation. Each time we are gathered, we hear words from one of our 6 Unitarian Universalist sources. Our opening words this morning come from English social reformer and statistician Florence Nightingale, who lived from 1820 to 1910. In her spare time, she is credited with being the foundation of what we now call modern nursing. I found that amazing. Like someone founded nursing. Apparently that was a thing that we didn't have before Florence Nightingale. She came to prominence while serving in the Crimean War, which she organized care for wounded soldiers at Constantinople, significantly reducing death rates by improving hygiene and living standards. Here are her thoughts on war. What the horrors of war are, no one can imagine. They are not wounds of blood and fever, spotted and low, or dysentery, chronic and acute, cold and heat and famine. They are intoxication, drunken brutality, demoralization, and disorder on the part of the inferior, jealousies, meanness, indifference, self-brutality on the part of the superior. And now, with our chalices lit and our hearts and minds centered, please join your voices with our, what did we call it this morning? no, our choirino, a tiny choir. Our tiny choirino will need a lot of help from you this morning. We are singing our first hymn, and would you like to address our first hymn?
There it is. Thank you. Answering the Call of Love. Whenever you see, it used to be called Standing on the Side of Love. It's now been changed to Answering the Call of Love. And so whenever you see that in your hymnal saying standing, please change the words to Answering the Call of Love.
This is the part in our service where we read a story, a children's story that is related to the service topic this morning. And the story we have for this morning is Horton Hatches the Egg, which was written by Dr. Seuss. Horton, the elephant, passed by a tree where Maisie the bird was. "Hello," Maisie the lazy bird called, smiling her best. "You have nothing to do, and I need a rest. Would you like to sit on the egg in my nest?" Well, the elephant laughed. Why, of all silly things, I haven't feathers, and I haven't wings. Me on your egg? Why, that doesn't make any sense. Your egg is so small, ma'am, and I am so immense. Tut, tut, answered Maisie. I know you're not small, but I'm sure you can do it. No trouble at all. Just sit on it softly. You're gentle and kind. Come on, good fellow. I know you won't mind. I can't, said the elephant. Please, begged the bird. I won't be gone long, sir. I give you my word. I'll hurry right back. Why, I'll never be missed. Very well, said the elephant, since you insist. You want a vacation, go fly off and take it. I'll sit on your egg and try not to break it. I'll stay and be faithful. I mean what I say. Toodaloo, sang out Maisie and fluttered away. I suspect we'll never see Maisie again. I don't know about you, but then carefully, tenderly, gently, he crept up the trunk to where the nest with the little egg slept. Then Horton the elephant smiled. Now what's that? He sat, and he sat, and he sat, and he sat. But Maisie by this time was far beyond reach, enjoying the sunshine way off in Palm Beach and having such fun and such a wonderful rest. She decided never to go back to her nest. So poor Horton sat there the whole winter through, and then came the springtime with troubles anew. His friends gathered round, and they shouted with glee, "Look, Horton the elephant up in a tree!" They taunted, they teased him, they yelled, "How absurd! Old Horton the elephant thinks he's a bird!" No matter what happened, this egg must be tended, but poor Horton's troubles were far, far from ended. For while Horton sat there, so faithful, so kind, 3 hunters came sneaking up softly behind. He turned and he heard the men's footsteps. He turned with a start. 3 rifles were aiming right straight at his heart. But the men didn't shoot, much to Horton's surprise. They dropped their guns and they stared with their eyes. "Look," they all shouted. "Can such a thing be? An elephant sitting on top of a tree. It's strange, it's amazing, it's wonderful, it's new. Don't shoot him, we'll catch him. That's what we'll do. We'll take him alive. Why, he's terribly funny. We'll sell him back home to a circus for money." And they did. And then after bobbling around for 2 weeks like a cork, they landed at last in the town of New York. "All ashore," the men shouted, and down with a lurch went Horton the elephant, still on his perch, tied to a board that could just scarcely hold him. Bump! Horton landed, and then the men sold him. Sold to a circus. Then week after week, they showed him to people at 10 cents a peek. They took him from Boston to Kalamazoo, Chicago to Weehawken, and Washington too. And Dayton, Ohio, St. Paul, Minnesota to Wichita, Kansas to Drake, North Dakota. And everywhere, thousands of folks flocked to see and laugh at the elephant up in a tree. Poor Horton grew sadder the further we went, but he sat in the hot, noisy tent. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. The elephant's faithfulness, 100%. Then, one day, the circus show happened to reach a town way down south, not far from Palm Beach. And dwaddling along way up in the sky, who, of all people, should happen to chance by but that good-for-nothing bird, that lazy, mazy, runaway bird, still on vacation and still just as lazy and spying the flags and the tents just below. She sang out, "Oh, what fun! Why, I'll go watch the show." There rang out the noisiest of ear-splitting squeaks from the egg that he'd sat on for 51 weeks, a thumping, a bumping, a wild, alive scrunching. "My egg," shouted Horton. "My egg? Why, it's hatching." "But it's mine," screamed the lazy bird when she heard the egg crack. "The work is all done. Now she wanted it back." "It's my egg," she sputtered. "You stole it from me. Get off my nest and get out of my tree." Poor Horton backed down with a sad, heavy heart. But at that very instant, the egg burst apart, and out of the pieces of red and white shell from the egg that he'd sat on so long and so well, Horton, the elephant, saw something whiz. It had ears and a tail and a trunk just like his. All the people came shouting, "What's this all about?" They looked and they stared with eyes popping out. When they cheered and they cheered and they cheered some more and some more, they'd never seen anything like it before. "Oh my goodness, my gracious," they shouted, "my word, it's something brand new. It's an elephant bird." And it should be like that. Because Horton was faithful. He sat, and what he meant he said, and what he said he meant. And then they sent him home happy 100%. Good old Dr. Seuss. And that's the end of our story this morning. And now I would like to invite Anne to bring us into our offertory. I never thanked you, Anne. I skipped over that little bit. I'm sorry. This is Anne May. Anne May is our worship associate this morning, and Anne is a member of our communications committee. And what you don't know is, unofficially, Anne tidied up this whole building this spring. She went through every closet and tidied it all up and put it all in places, so now we can find all the things we have, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you have a house like I do, you know that that is a big deal. Now imagine it 20 times larger. And it was not just Anne, it was Anne and it was Jill and it was other people that helped too. Beryl helped and there were a few other people that helped. But Anne was the one who every morning I'd come down the hallway and all the doors were open and I'd be like, "Oh, Anne's here," and I'd know exactly what was going on. Thank you very much for that. We really appreciate that. Thank you. Now you had something to say, I think.
The offering.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Emerson collects an offering each week, like many other communities of faith, but our offering is not for our church, which is supported by the annual pledges of our members. We collect our Sunday offering to give to others because we know that giving is both a transformational spiritual act and an important way to live out our values. 75% of today's offering will go to the June Share the Plate recipient, Answer Nepal. Answer Nepal is a nonprofit founded by Unitarian Universalist Earl Canfield. Each year, it enables Americans to radically change the lives of 500 to 700 talented and dedicated Nepali students from very poor families by helping to fund their education. Since the late 1990s, Answer Nepal students have graduated to become doctors, nurses, lawyers, teachers, and much more. Many Emersonians have and continue to sponsor Answer students. The remaining 25% of today's offering will go to Interfaith Ministries Meals on Wheels, which provides thousands of meals every day to Houston's homebound seniors. You can go to our webpage for online giving, put cash or a check in our offering basket, or mail a check to the church. During the offering music, children may meet Beryl at the back of the sanctuary to attend RE class.
This is the part in the service where we sit and rest, and you call it a meditation, you can call it a prayer. This is our meditation portion. And what I'd like to do today is bring you on a guided meditation. So if you would find a place that's comfortable, sit, put your maybe back against the pew back and rest your palms on your legs or maybe on the bench, whatever is comfortable for you. I'd like you to imagine, envision, I'd like you to bring yourself in your mind to this place. This place is a city. This place is a city, and all of your friends and your family live here with you in this city. Imagine your friends and your family. Imagine your friends and your family, people you know, people you love in your own lives. All of them. That the one you know that has asthma and needs an inhaler maybe. The one you know that has diabetes and needs insulin maybe. Or just someone you know that wears glasses or wears contact lenses. Maybe walks with a cane. All of these illnesses, all of these conditions are not unusual. We all know many. I'm sure you can all picture people you know and love right now. They all have remedies that are readily available, affordable, and solutions, and all of these are available at a central pharmacy. Imagine your friends and your family, people you know in your lives. Imagine your friends that have maybe more serious illness, recurring illness, that require trips to the doctor, or maybe occasional trips to the emergency room. Again, solutions readily available at a central hospital. Can you see these friends of yours in your mind's eye? Can you see these people you love in your mind's eye? We all know people like this. But this city that we all live in together, that we all love together, this is not just any city. This city is an island, thousands of miles from anywhere, through shark-infested waters. Boats are not safe in these waters. Swimming is not safe in these waters. And there are no passports for this city. Even if you could swim or boat somewhere, you'd just be sent back home. Now imagine the central pharmacy has been destroyed somehow. It is just rubble. It is just bricks and blocks of concrete where the pharmacy used to die, where it used to be. And there are no plans to rebuild this pharmacy. There are no plans to get inhalers or insulin or glasses or contacts, because all the people who would rebuild it are either dead or trying to flee. Now imagine the central hospital has been destroyed, and it too is rubble and concrete and rebar and not much more. And there are no plans to rebuild it either. There are no plans to provide ongoing or emergency care. All the people who would rebuild it are either dead or fleeing. What would you be feeling if this were you, if this were the city you lived in? What would you be saying to your friends and your family and your loved ones? Please let us now pause to consider the feelings we have, the feelings we're carrying in our hearts, and the feelings we feel at this moment as we have transported ourselves to this very imaginary place, but very real place.
The words for our second reading this morning come from American author, poet, and activist Maya Angelou, who died not quite 10 years ago at the age of 86. Amongst her other honors, she is the first Black woman to be depicted on a U.S. coin. These words come from her poem, On the Pulse of Morning, which she recited at President Clinton's first inauguration. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the shape of your most private need. Sculpt it into the image of your most public self.
So, we're going to talk about a very controversial topic this week, today, right now. And I cannot tell you how happy I am for this to be over. I have lamented over this for months. I am distraught. I am exhausted. And I have moved this sermon around in the schedule several times, hoping maybe it'll go away. And it never went away. In seminary, they teach you that preaching and ministry is about comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable. Have you heard that? That's an old one, right? That's a good one, though. In my first year here with you, I have very much focused on the comforting the afflicted part. I have focused on topics that were not particularly stressful, informative, helpful maybe, but not controversial topics, not real hot-button topics like this one. But today we are going to talk about Gaza and what is going on over there. So they teach you comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, but they also teach you don't leave people. If you bring them down with you, don't leave them down. Try to bring them back up again. And one of the things that I lament over, one of the things that I struggled with so hard about this service is I don't know how to bring you back up. Because I don't know that if there were a way back up, we would have fixed the problem. And I don't know. So I'm going to address this as a religious topic this morning. And the reason I'm doing this, the reason, despite my better judgment, despite my own anxiety over it, is that the UUMA, the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association, sent out a note, I think it was in December, I can't find it anymore, but their monthly letter to us said, if you're not preaching on Gaza, you're not doing your job. And I struggled with that. So I started doing research. And my research led me to two people closely tied to this congregation. One is Jerry Shawa, who many of you know, who is active in the ESL program, and whose children lived in Gaza on the day of the October 7th attacks. That's where they lived. And she dropped everything and a great effort to get them out. They are now out. And the other is Dick Doty. Dick will be coming by in September. Dick wrote a book, a photojournalist book about Gaza, and he will be coming by hopefully in September. We're working on getting him scheduled to give you his insights on it as well. So I'd like to thank both of them for helping me. And also state that the two people I talked to were from Gaza. I didn't have the opportunity to talk to anybody directly from Israel. So preparing this, I hit several, I call them walls. I hit several obstacles that I had really fought to get over. And I'm going to tell you what those obstacles are. The first obstacle is the feeling of inadequacy. Who am I, right? I'm some white dude. I'm Canadian heritage, born in the United States. If you do my 23andMe, you never get south of Montreal. There is not a drop of Palestinian blood. There is not a drop of Israeli blood. None. So who am I to talk about this? Am I just another voice in the chorus? Or is it an angry mob? I don't know. The chorus makes it sound like it's organized. Am I just another voice? I didn't know that necessarily that my voice was important. And I'm still not convinced it is. The second thing I ran up against was that facts are really, really hard to come by. So at one point I focused on just getting information from the AP, the Associated Press, thinking that they were a legitimate source of information. But even their information conflicted with each other, and it's not even months apart, it's weeks apart or days apart sometimes their information conflicted. This is so politicized. It is so incredibly politicized, geopoliticized. And as an example of that, I'm going to give you a great example, is the name of the sermon is How 3,000 Became 30,000. Because at the time I put this on the schedule, according to the information I had, Hamas had killed 3,000 Israelis, and Israel had killed 30,000 Palestinians. Between the time I put it on the schedule and today, I now know that to be not true at all. It's more like Hamas killed about 1,400 people, and Israel is up to around 40,000. But even those numbers are argued. People will say, I read one thing that said 300,000, which seemed a little excessive. But I have no idea. So I'm going on the best I can here. The other problem I ran up against, there were four of them, this is the third. The third problem I ran up against was the dog whistles, the language. The language that is used is very confusing, and it doesn't sound confusing to you and me. I mean, you have the obvious ones like freedom fighter versus terrorist, right? Depending at one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, right? You have those simple things. But even simple things like, is it the Gaza war or the Hamas war, gives you some idea of where you're coming from. Now, until I started reading and doing all this research, it was either those terms are interchangeable. The Gaza war or the Hamas war, we're talking about the same thing. Yeah, but we're talking about it totally differently if you call it the Gaza war, whether you call it the Hamas war, whether you call it Netanyahu's war, which is another war, another term that I've heard used for it. And simple terms like Israel. Well, what do you mean when you say Israel? Do you mean Jew or do you mean Zionist? And then even the word Zionist, I can kind of see where they're coming from based on their history and the way they've been treated by the rest of the world. So there's the language that you have to get through. And then the fourth one, the biggest one for me, was what is my end game here? Why would I bother to preach this? Well, as you know, I like to preach on say what, so what, now what, right? So say what is come to some mutual understanding. So what, now that we understand each other, why should we care? And now what, now that we care, what are we going to do? And I struggle with the what are we going to do part. Because I don't know what to do. What can I do? Some guy in Houston. What can we do? 200 odd of us. What can we do? When I'm coming at this not from a political perspective, but from a religious perspective. Not from a policy perspective, but from a people perspective. I understand, I stipulate to the fact that this is complex. It is not going to be solved today. It is not it's not going to be solved anytime soon. And I also say that I know what I think, having done a lot of research on this for months and months and months. But I'm not talking to you about what I think. That is not what's important here. What's important here is what you think. So I'm trying to frame this in a different and new way because I'm sure that many of you are as conflicted, as struggling with this as I am, which is, I think, why the UUMA suggested that if we don't talk about it, we're not doing our job. So that's why I've chosen to talk about it today. So let me give you some context about what we're talking about with regard to Gaza. I want to frame this in a way that makes sense to you. So I did a little research. Houston is 671 square miles. 671 square miles. Gaza is 141 square miles. So Gaza is about 1/5 the size of Houston, land-wise, to give you some idea. It is roughly the same population as all of Houston. So take all of Houston, cram it into about 1/5 the size, and that's the population that you have there. The population density, to give you some idea, is similar to Hong Kong, which is not exactly known as a undense place, right? Harris County is 1,778 square miles. Harris County is slightly larger than Rhode Island. You can fit 12.5 Gazas in Harris County. Israel is 8,522 square miles. You can get not quite 5 Harris counties and 61 Gazas in Israel. So I'm trying to give you some idea of the size and the people that we're talking about. It's also important to know, one thing that I learned in doing this is there is no such thing as a Palestinian passport. Even if you did manage to leave, you would just be sent back. And many people are not only not able to leave because they don't have the money, they don't have the ability, but they're not willing to leave or not wanting to leave. Some of them have no ties outside of Gaza, which makes sense. Some of you have no ties outside of Houston. Why would you leave? Or all of your ties are here. The gross domestic product per person, the per capita GDP in Gaza is about $876 per person. Houston is $75,422, or 86 times. So the Gaza GDP, the Houston GDP is 86 times the Gaza GDP, and that makes Gaza, if it were a country, 177th out of 191 countries in terms of GDP. So we are not talking about wealthy people. And 30% of that GDP comes from foreign aid. So that's Gaza. This is a humanitarian problem, right? We've seen the news. We're not living in a cave somewhere. We have seen the news. It is a humanitarian problem, and it is a human problem. It is a flaw in humanity. And I'd like you, if you can, around in your pews, if you would take out your gray hymnals, and I'd like you to find the principles in the gray hymnals. They're at the very beginning. They're at the very beginning of the gray hymnal. You're all familiar with them, but I just want you to take a look at them for a minute. Just be in their presence for a minute. You got to flip around. They're usually not numbered. They're usually not on a numbered page. It's easy to dismiss Gaza. It's way over there, right? It's just so normal for there to be problems there. There have been 14 military conflicts over there since 1948. It's like a clock in a way. You expect it to just bong at a certain point. It's so expected and so normal. And again, as I said before, I do know what I think on this, and this is not what this is about, but let me just say that in those 14 military conflicts since 1948, the death toll is almost always right around 10 to 1. 10 Gazas for every 1 Israeli. You can go check it out yourself. The destruction going on in Gaza right now renders the word humanitarian crisis inadequate. As you look at your principles and as you reflect on what you've seen happening over there, I'd like you to consider how what you see happening over there fits into your principles, or how your principles fit into what you see happening over there. I think what we have going on over there is, the best way to describe it is a global crisis of conscience. If this is our conscience, I don't know how you rectify, I don't know how you balance our principles with what we see. I think what we have going on is a global crisis of conscience. I think what we have going on is a global crisis of courage to fix it. We have a global crisis of resolve. To put it in a nice way, to put those three things, a crisis of conscience, a crisis of courage, a crisis of resolve, in a very nice, plain old simple way, is saying we don't have the guts to care enough. We believe in these truths that you're holding on your lap right now. We believe, most importantly about these truths, that these truths are not subject to selective application. It isn't that some people get these truths and some don't. We all get these truths. These are truths about what it means to be human. They are not selectively to be applied where we think application is okay. Instead, if we are living in a situation where these principles are not being applied, this is the great sin, is resisting or removing these lively principles from people's lives, saying, no, you don't get that. Right now we have another war going on, right? We have the war in Ukraine. And there are 4 other significant wars. Did you know that except for Ukraine, all the wars going on right now are between black and brown people? Is that significant at all to you? I hope it is. Now, as I said before, I don't want to drag you down into my funk over this. And you're going to have to pull yourselves out too. But I think the UUMA is right. I think I'm not doing my job if I pretend this is not happening. Comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable, right? Nobody needs to hear about this. But you all need to hear about this. We all need to hear about this. The West is so isolated, so distant. The primary response that I've seen from the West so far has been to send a little money. Maybe have a protest or two. The outrage is very isolated. What brought this to life for me was when I was in Chicago, right on Michigan Avenue, there were these protests, pro-Palestinian protests, which was weird. Like, I've never seen a pro-Palestinian protest before. This is a new thing, right? And the protest was supposed to end at whatever time it was, 4 or 5, whatever it was. Whatever time it was, when the protest was supposed to end, they didn't end on time, and the police was there in riot gear at, let's say, 5:05. They were already armed. They were cocked and loaded and aimed. And you know that they didn't do that in the 5 minutes between 5 o'clock and 5:05. They were standing there waiting for this to happen. They wanted to put this down. The West is so isolated. And we all know that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We know that, but it's so hard to put in person when it's way over there. And it's also so hard to personalize when I don't know what to do and when I don't know what this church can do. Can we band together? Sure we can. Can we educate ourselves? Yes, we can. Hopefully you'll come to Dick Doty's presentation, which he did over at First Church, which is wonderful. He's a photojournalist, so he has it all in pictures. Can we take some action? Well, voting session is starting back up again. But what if in our political action, what if in our call to do something about this, we find that our political good guys are not necessarily good, they're just better than the other guys? What if we land on that? How do we back off of that? Is that good enough for us? What are we willing to sacrifice in exchange for getting this done? So I go back to my struggles with why preach about this, and I will tell you that I made the big mistake of Googling how to preach on Gaza. That's how desperate I was at one point. Well, I wonder what general people think about this. And I watched, of course it's all Christian, right? I watched a bunch of Christian people, ministers like me, preaching about Gaza. And they all did the same thing, to the point where I was like, oh my God, not another one. They all did the same thing. Every one I found managed to somehow make it all about them. Somehow that Jesus is salvation, or Jesus, or God, and the Bible, and how Israel, and it was off topic as far as I was concerned, right? What's going on in Gaza is not some prediction about whether Jesus is coming back to save us all or to not save us all. One guy preached on and on and on about how the Israelis and the Jews don't really matter in a full church, a big church. Don't really matter because they're not Christian anyway. That was his message this Sunday. And I look at our principles, and I look at what these people are preaching, and I say, this is why I have to preach on this. Because this, right now, folks, is not about us. This is about our, not your and my particularly, but 60-year history of just letting it happen. The last person to really stand up and thump the pedestal, to thump the podium about this was Jimmy Carter. I mean, loud enough, right? Loud enough, and with a strong enough voice was Jimmy Carter, and we just laughed him out, right? So if no one is going to preach the truth about this, then I guess I have to. I could not find one Unitarian Universalist minister who preached about this. They don't want to do it either. And I understand why. Afflicting the comfortable. I know that there are a lot of Jews here, Junitarians, right? I get that. I understand that this is a hot button. But I also went and saw what was going on in Gaza. And don't do it. If today's not a good day, don't do it. It's you know the meditation? That's where I got the meditation from. There's no functioning hospital in Gaza, and no plans to have a functioning hospital in Gaza. Why? That was a rhetorical question. So if there is one religion, after looking at all these preachers, if there is one religion who can look at this on a purely moral ground and not give in to rhetoric, not give in to ideology, it is Unitarian Universalism. This religion is based on being in community together and figuring it out and making sure when one of us goes off on the wrong way, we're here to bring them back. If there's ever been a religion that can handle this conversation, it's us, and we're afraid to do it. I was afraid to do it. I didn't want to do this. But I think we're the ones. We're the ones with no skin in the game. We're the ones who don't think that if we stop sending bombs to Israel, Jesus won't love us anymore. That's not us. And you laugh, but those people are real. And I will leave you I want to try to bring you up. I'm not going to leave you with that. I was going to leave you with something that I'm not going to leave you with. I'm going to leave you with hope, because sometimes that's all we have left, right? We have this thin sliver of hope that we're holding on to. And I think the sliver of hope that we're holding on to there is people like you and me. And I think that the world has a right to expect that of us. The world has a right to expect of us calm, looking at this and saying, this is not right, it should stop. And it certainly doesn't seem to be coming from anywhere else. There doesn't seem to be anyone else doing this that I can find. So inform yourself. Inform yourself of the details on this. Inform yourself. And when you do it, consider if this were where you lived. Consider if these were your people. A simple vial of insulin can be life-saving, and there just isn't any. They said that it would require 800 trucks a day to re-provision Gaza. 800 trucks a day. That's where the situation is there. And I also understand Israel's point. I do. The political is tangled, but we have to get through the political. And what I'm hearing people say, one more thing, what I'm hearing people say is, oh, call for a ceasefire. Absolutely call for a ceasefire, but that's not good enough. You can't totally destroy something and then say, okay, I'm done now, I'm going home. Someone has to fix it. And I think the world has a right to expect that of us, because nobody else seems interested in doing it. That was the worst thing I've done in a long time. And I'm glad it's over, and I'm glad... I didn't... No. If I wish... No, thank you. That was nice of you. But and we will now sing a hymn or do a dance or something, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh, comfort me. I picked this hymn specifically for the message and how it fits in with what's going on there. So thank you. going to extinguish our chalice now, not as a symbolic ritual, but as a practical ritual. We do this because the flickering, fluttering light of our congregation and our love for each other and this beloved community, and each of us here present, is with us and stays with us as we go through our week. We are so grateful for your presence this morning, everybody here, and those of you who've joined us on YouTube. After the postlude, we will be we'll be ending our streaming service. After our postlude, just because of the topic this morning, we will also do a talk back so that I can hear all the things I did wrong. And there were probably a lot of them, but I invite you to stay for a talk back, and then don't forget we're going to craft pita after for lunch. If you don't want to do either of those two things, we have coffee and social hour in the gathering place for you. So thank you to all of you, and I invite you now to hear my benediction to you. May we, in the course of our week, come to be able to feel the liberating freedom of this religious path we share. May our gods welcome us. May they challenge us to live up to our own expectations of ourselves, wherever and whatever they are. And may the world around us light up so that we may see our way back to clarity and wholeness. May all of that be so.